Hello and welcome back to the Plant Powered Podcast. Today I've got a very exciting interview with Brian from Better Body by Brian. So do you just want to give yourself a little bit of an introduction and tell everyone what you do?
Sure. So first of all, thank you for having me on this interview. Glad to be speaking with you about all this. My name's Brian Langowski. I'm from Chicago, Illinois, and I am a vegan fitness and health coach that work both with people in person and online, but more looking to transition to completely online and help people out in that sense. I've been a personal trainer for about 8 years now. I love it with a passion. I love helping others. And I really just want to get the word out there and spread the message about eating more plant-based and improving people's health and body for the better.
Yeah, so I originally found Brian just through Instagram, and he always shares photos of his food and stuff and shares little health and nutrition tips, and it's exactly the same approach as me. But I find it really interesting because you're a guy, because usually it's like not masculine to eat plant-based.
Yeah, exactly.
And you still look fit and everything as well, and like vibrant. So I think that's a really important message that more men should get on board as well. But yeah, I just like the message and all the food photos and stuff. It looks really good. So the first question is, how long have you been vegan / plant-based, and what inspired you to change?
So I've been vegan now for a little over 4 years. It really was kind of a quick transition. I think I went vegetarian for maybe a week. And then after that week, I went completely vegan, especially once I got more information about really how vegetarianism isn't doing that much good for the animals in part, and for your health, because you're still eating a lot of those animal products. But really what transitioned me was I really was already thinking for a long time about ditching meat, because I've always been really into like health and nutrition, and I knew it wasn't the best thing to put in my body. But it really, I think it's just that mental hurdle that people need to go through to finally be able to take that step. And my little sister actually was the first one to give up meat. She never really was a big fan of it. And she kind of helped me, transition and push me in that right direction. And, I feel great. And I can definitely say I'll keep doing this for forever. I don't plan on going back.
Yeah, that's so funny, because mine is coming up 4 years now as well, because I was like on my 21st birthday, pretty much at that same time. That's when I watched the What the Health documentary, and then was completely inspired to change. And then that's the same time I started doing weight training as well, and then my physique completely transformed, but like without trying really. Like I just started going to the gym, eating plant-based, and after 6 months everyone's like, whoa, you've lost so much weight. And I'm like, oh, have I? And I look back at old photos and I was like, oh my God. So I didn't, like, it wasn't this strenuous hard thing, it just happened naturally kind of thing. So that was awesome.
Yeah, it's very easy, right? Like it's like there's so much like different diets and out there, but it really is more than just a diet. You don't have to really think about what you're eating as much compared to like different ways of eating out there, right?
Yeah, I think it's very, like, people think it's restrictive, but to me it's like abundance, because I don't feel restricted because I don't crave those other certain foods. But you discover so many more ingredients and you can like eat more food. So it's like a much better diet approach.
Exactly.
Yeah. What are your top tips for building your plate with carbs, protein, fiber, and fat sources?
So it's really the same as any other way of building your plate, focusing on your macronutrients. The really only thing that changes is your sources. So really I focus on a balanced approach, making sure you're getting enough protein, carbs, and fats in your diets. I don't think you should restrict any macronutrients like a lot of diets have you doing. They're there for a reason, and they all serve, purposes. So I make sure to get enough protein during the day and enough whole good carbs, making sure that it includes fiber and it's not just processed carbs. I think that's where carbs get the bad rep from. And then fats are also very important too, to help regulate our hormones and things like that for different bodily functions, our heart and our brain too, as well. So In terms of like tips, basically you just kind of have to know what to eat on a plant-based diet, knowing the different sources of what to eat, and making sure you're getting enough. I think most people, their biggest struggle is they don't even know how much they're supposed to eat or how much they've even been eating. So I think getting an understanding of what their macronutrients should look like in the first place is like the first step in there before we could even dive into, the sources there. People need to know how much they're actually eating.
Yeah. Something that I notice that people do if they try to go vegan or plant-based, they usually make heaps of like really kind of like piddly little salads. But I always tell people to bulk up your salad. So whether you add like a can of beans or chickpeas into it, or quinoa that's been cooked in veggie stock or something, or I always do like a tray of roast veggies, then you can just put that in your salad with heaps of greens and protein as well, so that it actually keeps you feeling full. And there's been girls who they have boyfriends who have very physically demanding jobs and try to make them eat vegan, but then give them like this tiny lunch and then limit their portion sizes and stuff. So it's got to have a complete switch of mindset, which is why I like it so much, because it's about adding more. And also the importance of fats as well, because I work in a health store and this girl came in and people seem to be really scared of fat. And she said she was doing this girl's 8-week program and she's like, oh my God, I keep going over my fat for the day. What's a protein powder with no fat? But for me, I add like whole handfuls of pumpkin seeds and stuff to my food, and I feel really good eating that. And I think it's also important for women's hormones and like just for our mental health and like mental focus and clarity and everything. So I think people are too scared of fat just because of what they've been told or what they've seen online and stuff.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, like I said before, it all depends on the sources, right? So there's good and bad sources of protein, good and bad sources of carbs, and then good or bad sources of fat. So like, honestly, you should kind of be wary of different protein, carbs, and fats, but it's really just about the sources. If you're eating the right ones, then it's not really an issue about overeating. It's just getting that healthier ratio in there.
Yeah. And the number one thing that I think, because people have been asking me as well, I don't know how much to eat or what to eat, and they're like feel completely lost. I think if they've been tracking food for the whole time, they don't know how to read their body. What I always do is just ask myself what feels good at the time. So like even if it is like junk food for a treat or something that might feel good for your like what you mentally want at that point in time, but it's okay to have every now and then. But when you make your plate, what's going to feel good to have on it? And when I add all these different seeds and stuff, it feels really good after, and you feel really energized and like you don't get a sore tummy from anything, and you just feel energetic, which is good.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, that's what calories are. We can't be scared of calories either. I think there's too much of a restrictive mindset about just cutting calories, because that's how, the fitness industry said, like, as long as you, burn more calories than you consume, you're going to lose weight. But are you losing any good weight? And that's the question. And it's really about eating quality calories that your body needs and it's going to thrive on. And that's the way. You're not going to build muscle if you're not eating enough calories. So that's the first step. Most of the clients that I work with are actually under eating their calories, I notice, especially if they've been trying to eat plant-based, because plant foods are just generally a lot lower in calories than animal products. And that's a great thing. That means you could eat more food and not go over your calories. But at the same time, you do need to be aware of the sources you do need to eat to make sure you're getting in those amount of calories.
Yeah. The next question I wanted to ask was, what does a day on your plate look like? So what are your common go-to meals for breakfast, lunch, dinner, and snacks?
Sure. So my breakfast is usually pretty similar day to day. I really like to either start my day off with just a bowl of fruit with like berries, bananas, watermelon, stuff like that. Or if I need something heartier, if I have like a earlier gym session, then I'll have something like oatmeal or a tofu scramble with toast, like avocado toast and stuff like that. Something more satisfying that's going to give me more energy for the gym. But all fruit is also great as well. But something that you don't want something super heavy in the morning. You want it to be easily digestible. Your body digests the most anywhere from 6 a.m. to 11 a.m. in the morning. So you don't want to like overload it with like tons of fat. Give it like quick sources of good carbs from fruit that comes with fiber too. It's going to help out with your digestion for the day. So that's what I usually have for breakfast, oatmeal, tofu scramble, pancakes sometimes as well if I'm feeling that. Lunch and dinner usually looks pretty the same. I usually just include a high quality protein, whether it's tofu, tempeh, seitan, chickpeas, beans, pasta salad, or like high protein pasta, I mean. And I'll make that with a ton of veggies. So like I always tell people, it's really easy if you just have half of your plate with your veggies of choice. It'll make your plate fill out more with low calorie, healthy, nutrient dense foods. And then, like I said, you have your protein there from your quality plant sources. And then I usually like to add a quality fat, which is my favorite, is avocados. I add that to like almost every meal, or nuts or seeds, just depending on the meal and what I'm making like that. But there's so many. I love stir fries. I think it's just really quick and easy to do too. And you can just throw in a bunch of veggies. I usually like using a lot of frozen veggies too, because it's convenient. You can store it for a while, and it's actually, some of them are higher, more nutrient dense because they're picked at the peak of freshness. Where a lot of fresh produce lose their nutritional value, whether, if they're shipped for a long distance and then, sitting at the store.
Yeah.
So it really just depends.
Yeah. I love the tip of eating, like using half your plate as veggies. I do that. I don't know, it's pretty easy to do. Usually I just make stir fries for dinner, and most of my meals are 10 minutes or like max 15 minutes kind of thing. And people think like it would take longer waiting to order takeaways. You'll be waiting like longer than that anyway, sometimes.
Exactly.
So I find it really easy to do that. Oh, and what do you ever have any like sweet treats and desserts or anything?
Oh yeah, I got a big sweet tooth, so I actually have to be careful with that. But I do like sweets, like different cookies, donuts, stuff like that, ice cream.
Yeah.
So I definitely include that like in my groceries. I just have to reiterate that that's not something I consume on a daily basis.
Yeah.
It's basically when I have like a strong craving for it, or if I know calorie wise, I'm low on the day and I can afford to have it. And I basically tell people all the time is like, you don't have to restrict anything as long as you're getting done what you need to get done. And in terms of eating, it's making sure you're hitting your macros, you're hitting your calories, and most importantly, getting enough protein. Like you don't really have to track all the macros all the time, in my opinion. I think as long as you're getting enough protein, then the other macros kind of come in together nicely. Like you're not going to end up overeating on carbs and fats because protein is so satiating, right? You feel a lot more full during it. So if I hit my numbers for the day and I still, have some leeway with my calories, I could afford a treat. And it doesn't matter if it's a weekday or a weekend. I don't believe in like cheat meals. I think you should just listen to yourself. I'm all about like intuitive eating and listening to your body.
Yeah, because I've seen a few things. I saw this one nutritionist. She said she goes to the supermarket hungry so that she buys what she actually wants. But that's the only person I've ever heard do that. But I say I always go when I'm feeling satisfied, but I always allow room for treats anyway, because I know some nights during the week I'm going to want chocolate. So I make sure that like I buy it. Like I don't always buy it. Sometimes I make healthy slices and stuff, but I make like lots of healthy alternatives, but still enjoy some sweet treats as well. So I always just allocate for that during my shop, so that I don't know, I'm not like left out and like craving something intensely kind of thing. So I just like allow room for it to be in my diet anyway.
Yeah, definitely. I don't know if I agree with the whole going on empty stomach, because every time I do that, I just buy way too much food than I personally need. And like, I try to budget weekly. I go grocery shopping once a week and I try to make like a good budget. And if I have like a good, healthy meal beforehand, I get everything that I need. I don't like get all these cravings at the time. But if I'm hungry, it's a lot tougher to avoid certain foods.
Yeah, if I go when I'm hungry, I always buy those veggie chips and stuff, and it's still like nice to have as a treat, but I always feel like a little bit of a sore tummy after, because I've got because of the oil in it. I'm kind of sensitive to it. But if I do go hungry, I always buy those. I'm like, oh, not cheap, I'll just buy a pack of those, and then it always ends up like not feeling the best.
Yeah. Gotta be careful for those.
Yeah. What are your top tips for giving up animal products if people are struggling with the transition?
I think the best tip, in my opinion, would be to start easy. Like, give up what's easy for you to give up. Don't go from the position where it's like, oh my God, like steak is my favorite food in the world, I have to give this up now. Like, no, like just reduce all the other stuff that's
Yeah.
like more doable for you to give up.
Yeah.
And if you still have trouble with this one thing you love, then that's fine at the moment. You don't have to go all in right away. Everyone has
Yeah.
their own journey, and everyone has to do it at their own pace, because we were not born vegan. We decided to make a transition later in life, and it's not fair to just say that you just have to like completely cut everything out just because it's not healthy for you. So
Mm.
I would say just like give up the things that are easy for you to give up, the things where it's like, oh, well, I won't really miss this food too much. I can easily replace that with something healthier.
Yeah.
And then just slowly keep working on it. And eventually you'll be like, wow, I'm only eating like 1 or 2 animal products. The rest is plant-based. So I'm eating like mostly plant-based, and I really haven't even realized it yet. And
Mm.
then mentally, it's a lot easier for that person to understand that way.
Yeah, I think that's a really good approach, because for me, I had quite a gradual transition. And I think so many people put it off because I know a lot of people who post online, they have like a family cultural dinner once a month where it's very meat orientated. They're like, I could never go vegan because how would I handle this social situation? So at first you could just say, I'll eat plant-based the rest of the time, and then just allow that to be like your treat time, or a time where you're just like enjoy as it is, if that makes sense. And people think, yes, if steak is their favorite food or cheese is their favorite food, they don't make the transition at all or even try because of one thing. So if you just make swaps for other things, like I've found like the best yogurt I've ever tried is this banana oat yogurt, and it's like, oh my God, it's just so good that I'll never want normal yogurt ever again.
Yeah, that sounds great.
Transitioning to the plant-based milks and stuff, before I gave up cow's milk when I was 17, so way before everything else, but I had a cough for a whole year during every season, even through summer. I just couldn't stop coughing, and like always had
Wow.
like mucus in my throat. And then I gave up cow's milk and it went away, so obviously I'll never drink it again, and it just hurts my tummy so bad now. So I think definitely just starting off with the smaller things, or things that you won't really miss, and then just take it at your own pace, because it's better than not trying at all.
Yeah, definitely. Like I always tell people too, like give up dairy, because I feel like dairy is a lot easier to give up than meat
Yeah.
is, especially because like people like the taste of meat usually a lot better. But it's
Yeah.
like dairy is like kind of maybe even worse for you than meat is, because it's so concentrated, especially like cheese and all that is so concentrated that it's really could be even more harmful to your body than meat is. That's why I think like
Yeah.
vegetarianism is a joke, because like you're not really helping the animals, or you're not really helping your health either. Like I'm just putting it out there. Like I really don't care. Like if any vegetarians have a problem with that, I'd love to have a great discussion about it.
Yeah.
But yeah, just like do whatever you can. It shouldn't be an all in sort of thing. And I blame vegans for this too, that like are super pushy, where it's like, if you have one slip up and you do like, you won't give up one thing, you're suddenly a bad person. It's like, it's ridiculous. And honestly is like, I think we just need to find people where they're at and help them the best we can. There's no point of ridiculing people for their decisions.
Yeah, I had something similar happen to me. I shared on my story, I think I had a big day, and if I ever get like a scratchy throat from talking too much at work, because sometimes it like, I don't know, it just makes my throat really dry if I've had a busy day like dealing with customers. And I put on my story that I was having a honey tea, and I bought it from my friend, and last time she gave me a tub, it lasted me like a few months. I don't have it often, pretty much only to make the tea. And this vegan messaged me saying like how bad it was, and gave me this video and stuff. So I shared the video on my story because I found it was interesting. And he messaged me a bit later saying he had actually unfollowed me because he thought that I was an ethical consumer. And he unfollowed me because I drank honey, even though it was from my friend's own beehives kind of thing. And I thought that was like kind of funny, despite all my other content where I'm sharing like all these different plant-based recipes and health tips and trying to help people, just for like one little thing.
Yeah, no, people's egos are ridiculous. Like it's insane. Yeah, I don't even want to talk to those kind of people because they're just, you're not going to help anyone that way. Like we're in the business of helping people, and ridiculing people or just saying that like, oh, if you don't go all in, it's not good enough, then
Yeah.
that's not a good approach.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Did you want to talk about abundance versus restrictive mindset with nutrition and dieting?
Yes, definitely. So I talk about this all the time on my page, because it's like a real big thing for me, because like all the time when I have someone come to me and they have trouble like losing weight, they're almost always under eating. They're not overeating. It's just that they've under eaten for such a long time, and in the wrong foods too, that their metabolism is just completely shot. It's not burning how it's supposed to be, and they're not focusing on the things they should be. They're just focusing on losing weight.
Mm.
But to lose weight, you have to focus on like everything else, right? You got to focus on building muscle, eating more quality food, getting enough rest, like enjoying, putting more nutrients in your body. When you're restricting, you're gonna obviously be like nutrient deficient in some point, because if someone tells you to only eat like 1200 to 1500 calories, like that's just not sustainable for most people unless like you're really small.
Mm.
But for the most people, they should actually work up to a place where they're eating enough calories where they're like, wow, like I feel so satisfied, like I don't even want any more, I don't want to eat any more food. And then from there, then you can start to cut calories, because you're already at a higher up spot where you should be, your metabolism's where it should be, and you're in a place where you can support muscle growth, instead of losing that.
Mm. Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And I think with social media, all the fitness influencers or PTs that I see, they're like, all it comes down to is being in a calorie deficit. And I think girls try to do that all the time. But I just live in maintenance, and like I just find it, I don't know, really easy, I guess, because I've found the balance and know what works and know what feels good, and can still like improve my physique. But if you're trying to cut calories your whole life or for years on end, then it's definitely going to have a detrimental effect.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, you can speak for that too, right? Because you even competed and stuff. So
Yeah,
you've had like higher calorie diets, I'm sure, and then going to lower, and you know exactly how that process works, right?
that was kind of weird for me because that was my first show, but I did a 6 week prep because I did it to get out of a bad mental place. And I'd never restricted food before. So I had to get my calories cut, but I couldn't physically do it because I'd never restricted food, and I kept eating over because I was hungry. And I think because I was trying to restrict, I only crave sweet food the whole time. And now that I just eat normal, I eat better than when I was like in prep. So it was like an
Yeah,
interesting
exactly.
approach. I think it was a good learning curve for me to see what my clients might go through week to week kind of thing. But the second that I was like out of the show, I just like I eat back to normal, if that makes sense. So next time when I do a longer prep, I'm just trying to build muscle at the moment, but it will probably be easier doing it over a longer period of time instead of being so drastic trying to get ready for it, if that makes sense. So I definitely feel more confident second time round because I kind of know what to expect from everything now. So that's good.
Yeah, definitely. The longer process will definitely help you, because you'll be able to cut without losing as much muscle in the process too,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
you can't avoid it completely.
Yeah.
So it's always kind of a give and take. You just got to find that balance.
Yeah. The next question was, oh, we kind of already talked about it, but how you allocate room for treats with your grocery shop. So basically you just buy things to keep in the house, but you only eat it on days where you feel like you should, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so I basically have like my favorite like junk meals or whatever, and then I just have a certain portion. So I know that like I can't eat more than 2 pints of ice cream this week. I'll set myself a portion that way where it's like I'm not restricting the foods I'm eating. I'm just making sure I'm not overdoing it, right? Because if you buy 4 pints of ice cream, there's a good chance that you might eat it all, right? But if you only limit yourself to a couple, and know that like, okay, I can have all this and this is still fine throughout the week, then you won't feel guilty about it, first of all, and then you'll still be on track with your goals. You won't be worrying about it. So you really just kind of see like okay, what are my favorite junk foods? How many calories are they? How many calories are in them? How bad are they for you? Like, should I really try to restrict this more, or can I have some more of this? And then find more like, I guess, healthier substitute too. So if you're someone that like loves chocolate, but usually eat milk chocolate, we'll try like a darker chocolate. Maybe it doesn't have to be super dark, but at least get rid of that dairy that's in the chocolate, right? So it's like simple swaps like that could even be easier, where it's like you're still enjoying, satisfying that sweet tooth, but it's actually kind of good for you, because dark chocolate is, it's not like super good for you, but it does have some health benefits.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that with the chocolate. I still love chocolate, but sometimes I'll make a slice instead, or sometimes I'll make like yogurt bowls and just put in some chocolate drops, but add mango and stuff. And
Yeah.
it's a more wholesome thing, but you still get a little taste of it, or making like a smoothie with cacao powder, or having a chocolate protein shake or something. So you're still satisfying it, but chocolate is just one of those things. So you're like alternating between a treat food and health foods.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. That's a great approach.
Yeah. What are your top tips for building lean muscle and burning fat?
It's like the same for always. Focus on resistance training, your favorite form of resistance training, progressively getting stronger. So like if you're trying to lose fat, you actually want to focus on getting stronger and building lean muscle. So the top three things really is eating enough quality protein that's not inflammatory to you, and we can talk about that later. Making sure you're doing progressive resistance training. So a lot of people do resistance training. They'll go to the gym, they'll lift weights, but the problem is they don't have a program where they're continuously getting better at it. You know, I've been in the gym for so many years, and I see the same members for years and years. And I'll be like, well, they look exactly the same because they're doing the same things over and over. They're not getting stronger. They may be working out. They're keeping themselves where they're at. They might not be getting worse, but they're not really helping themselves. Because building muscle is tough. Like, it's not an easy thing to do. It's precious tissue, and it requires a lot of work and enough protein and recovery too. A lot of people kind of mistake the rest. If you're not sleeping enough, if you're not getting enough recovery, that's going to be very hard for you to build muscle and burn fat. There's actually a famous study where it shows people who sleep 7 to 8 hours a night compared to people who slept, I think, 5 to 6. The 7 to 8 hours burn 40% more fat throughout the night than the people that slept less. And it makes sense because you're releasing a lot of growth hormone during that time too, and you're recovering. So if you're not hitting all those REM cycles, then you're not potentially recovering properly and building muscle and losing fat. So, I mean, there's a lot that goes into it. So there's not just like one thing. It's kind of like an all thing together. But I think the biggest thing is to focus on building instead of losing, because most people just want to do a ton of cardio, and it could help you lose weight, but you're going to lose fat, you're going to lose muscle, you're going to lose water, and you might end up looking exactly the same and even lose muscle in the process and look worse if you're not doing it correctly, which I see all the time.
Yeah, I'm still new to, or like, I feel like I know a lot about nutrition, but I'm still new to stuff in the gym. Like, I've been doing weight training for years, but have never really followed programs. I used to just do like full body days kind of thing. But then since the show, that's my first time ever doing like a specific upper body or lower body day. But I was just doing the same moves over and over. And then when I finally got a program for the bodybuilding show, like, the trainer took me through and I could lift double the weight than what I thought. And I'd never like added more weight. I just always went back to the same weight. So I'm still trying to learn how to do progressive overload and like slowly get stronger, because I'd always just done like the same thing for ages. And I still am like very happy with my body, but you definitely have to keep improving and like, get good at the same moves, but then like eventually switch it up to different moves so that you still challenge new muscles and like make your body work, like, challenge it with new things, if that makes sense. And definitely with recovery, because people think that they look at me and they think that I gym 6 or 7 days a week, twice a day. And I literally gym 3 to 4 days a week.
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't take that much. It's really just doing the right things with enough intensity and keep
Yeah.
getting better at it.
Yeah.
And I think it's tougher mentally for women too, especially with the resistance training, because women are afraid of, you know, getting like big and bulky and building those muscles. But it's like the exact opposite. Like the
Yeah.
women who want to like tone, like that's exactly what you want to do, is you want to build more lean muscle. And
Yeah.
it's going to enhance everyone's physique. It's the same thing that works for guys is the same thing that works for girls. Like it's just, you know, you have to just adjust your calories and the weights for the person, but it
Yeah.
really is kind of like the same protocol. And even like you said, like the splits, but I love full body workouts. I
Yeah.
love it for men and women because it makes you do a lot of the big compound movements like squats,
Oh,
deadlifts,
yeah.
rows, presses, pull-ups. Those are like the best exercises you can do. So when you're hitting full body, you get this like awesome anabolic response that just wants to make your body build muscle and lose fat.
So how do you determine which foods are actually healthy? And that's referring to people thinking meat is like only good for iron is only from meat, the saturated fat and animal protein, which people usually get misconceptions about.
Yeah, so I mean, this is a tough topic because people really people are really kind of dogmatic when it comes to this because it's whatever they've been taught and learned throughout the years. So if they've been taught throughout, you know, the big meat and big dairy industry has been like putting it into our heads, like since we were born. I don't know about in Australia, but especially in America, like they're just always promoting meat and dairy products and milk and all this stuff. So like you kind of get trained over time to thinking like that's how it should be. That's what I've learned throughout my whole life. That's how I ate. So when someone tells you that like, hey, meat's not actually good for you and dairy's not good for you either, it's like people get literally mad. And I get it because I was the same way. But like you have to think about it from a different perspective. Like, okay, are plants giving people heart disease and high cholesterol and diabetes? Like it's the exact opposite. Those are the foods so high in nutrients, so high in phytochemicals that and antioxidants that protect your body from cancer and different diseases, and lower your chances of diabetes and high cholesterol and all those things. So it's like, well, what's causing it then? You know, it's got to be all the other stuff you've been eating.
Yeah.
And it's like the famous thing where it's like, oh no, it's just in my genetics. Like I have this and that. Well, you know, the way you're eating is also like from generation to generation, you've eaten like the same foods. So you're going to have like the same diseases. But really it all comes down to the data. When you look at the data, saturated fat is not good for heart health, not good for brain health. Heme iron found in animal products is very inflammatory to the body and it's not good for us. What else is there? Cholesterol. Our body produces all the cholesterol we need. There's no need to consume any extra cholesterol in our diet. And it's really that combination of saturated fat and cholesterol, those two mixed together, that really build up the plaque in our arteries. And I mean, you can talk to any cardiologist about this. They'll tell you about it. There's plenty of not just vegan doctors, but I mean, normal doctors too will still recommend meat, but they also don't look into nutrition that much. Like you really have to know who your sources are and who's actually doing the research on this, right? Because I don't just follow like just some random person. Like I literally study papers from doctors on a daily basis, like going over all of this data. Like there's no comparison. Like we know what's good for us and what's not at this point.
Yeah, I had something really interesting happen the other day. So this lady she had come to me for a nutrition appointment, but she was signed up to my email newsletter, and this email went out and I just shared some videos. A couple of them were very, I guess, intense, but they'd really opened my eyes to what happened. It's this girl called Erin Janis, and it's about the egg industry and one about that dairy is scary video. So there were those two which were a bit intense, but there was also like a documentary about the year 2050 and another one about like renewable energy and stuff. So I just thought that they were really good to, I don't know, share the truth about the animal welfare and the environment side of things. And this lady, so I live in the beef capital of Australia, so people obviously think it's really good for you here and they love everything. And they think like, yeah, the cows, like they love to be milked. It's so good for them. But this lady replied to me and she was like, Cassie, what you see on social media there's just people's opinions. It's not facts. And look into your resources before blah, blah, before you send me any more of her shit. And she was like, she is in fact a slagger in capital letters, and like had a complete go at me over email just for sending those resources. So I was like, what do you mean by slagger? But I think she means she's like hating on, oh, she said that essential food industries. That's what she was like. I was like, oh my God. So
Oh
just,
my God.
if you don't like my content, you can unsubscribe at any time. But I found these resources very impactful. So that's all I said. But she was very angry. So for people who have been told their whole life that like you need all of these products, it's a bit much to be told that you don't. So that's kind of the only thing. And I think it's like helping the economy, like our world relies on doing all that stuff to the animals and the planet. So it's pretty hard to change people's minds, but more for people who have had it like drummed into them their whole life and stuff, it's a bit hard.
Yeah, definitely. It's really just the mental barrier, because after that, people are more open to like actually discussing like what's good for you or not. Otherwise, people don't want to hear it because they don't want to admit that they've been, possibly eating the wrong foods for their most of their lives, right?
Yeah.
So it's really about that.
So the next question is how to stop fearing carbs. What are your favorite carb sources and why?
Yeah, so carbs are our primary source of energy. That's what our body wants to run on, and it's stored in form of glycogen in our muscles and in our liver, and it basically gets released whenever we need it for quick energy. So my favorite carb sources are probably fruit's probably the best one because it's got so many nutrients in it. It's hydrating. It's got water, antioxidants, stuff like that. So any type of fruit is awesome for you. And then like unprocessed whole grains. So, and then unprocessed whole grains and legumes are probably like the second best. So we're talking about like quinoa, lentils, different types of beans, black beans, pinto beans, kidney beans, and stuff like that. And like different ancient grains like amaranth and millet, and kamut. And there's so many different rices too. Like there's nothing wrong with white and brown rice. I prefer white rice better than brown rice, honestly, because I just think brown rice is kind of boring. But but rices are good. And then I like protein pasta as well.
Yeah.
Because I usually get the ones made out of legumes. So it's like my favorite is like the one made out of chickpeas.
Yeah.
There's no like bullshit ingredients there. It's just basically chickpea flour and stuff like that. And it's high in protein and fiber. So it works a lot differently from your body than a regular normal pasta would, where it would be like a huge spike in blood sugar right after you'd eat it. So I think the biggest thing is just really, and breads too. I eat breads too. I think the best bread to eat is like sprouted bread because it's a lot easier to digest in your body. Anything sprouted is always going to be better. You're going to absorb more nutrients that way. That's why I also, whenever I make like lentils or quinoa, I always buy those sprouted as well. And if you don't have access to those in your stores, you could always sprout them yourselves by soaking. So that's a very easy and common method that people use as well. But yeah, don't avoid carbs. I eat, anywhere from 250 to 400 grams of carbs a day, just depending on what I need. And especially if I'm trying to build muscle and put some body weight on, like it's great and it's important. It's very hard to build muscle without having enough carbs in your system.
Yeah. And just a note for anyone who thinks, because I saw this girl's story last night. She was just started hotel quarantine, and I gave her this meal with rice with some black beans in it. And she was like, I'll definitely be picking those out because I can't digest them. But a lot of people think that, but it's because you're not used to digesting them. So I just tell people I can eat when I used to eat a lot more food, I could eat a whole can of chili beans on toast and be fine, kind of thing. And people never imagine doing that. So I just tell people to add a tablespoon or a couple of tablespoons to your food just to get used to it and get used to digesting different kinds of beans and legumes. And then you can slowly up it. So I don't eat beans and stuff all the time, but I definitely have no problem digesting them. But instead of, I don't know, just every once in a while, if you're making a stir fry, add a can of beans to it. Or if you're making nachos, I love adding kidney beans to the mix. Or yeah, having like chickpeas and hummus and stuff. So just start introducing them slowly, and then your gut will slowly build up the right bacteria to be able to digest it comfortably.
Exactly. And I think that's the biggest problem, right? Is because people will go from like not eating any types of legumes or like fiber in general for that matter. And then they'll be like, okay, I'm going to start eating more plant-based. And then like they go eat these things and they never really had them. And then they're wondering why, you know, they're getting bloated or, you know, they're not digesting properly. Well, you have to fix your gut microbiome first. If your gut's not diversified, if you're eating the same foods constantly and you're not introducing enough fiber, enough different plants to your diet, your gut's not going to respond to any healthy food really that well. Like you have to fix that first. And you got to start slowly, like you said, gradually implement it in. I definitely wouldn't recommend eating a whole can of beans at once if you're not used to it. Start with like a 4 cup or something like that, and gradually build your way up. And then, two, if you're not eating a lot of fiber, make sure you're drinking enough water. A lot of times we have gut issues because you're taking in a large amount of fiber, but you're not drinking enough water with that, to alleviate any like gas or discomfort or bloating that might be associated with that.
Yeah, I definitely think that's a good tip. The next question I was going to ask was how eating more can help you lose weight. So kind of what we touched on earlier, when people are trying to just reduce and cut for years because they're trying to lose weight, like how can eating more help them get more energy and do better workouts, which will build more muscle and improve their metabolism and things like that?
Yeah, for sure. And this is really a quick fix. It's just, again, mentally getting people to want to eat more is the hardest part because people are automatic like, oh my God, I'm going to gain all this weight.
Yeah.
But it really is the way to do it is because like most people, like say a woman comes to me, a middle-aged woman comes and she's like, okay, I've been eating like around 1,500 calories this whole time and I can't lose weight. And then she wants to lose weight. And now to lose weight, she has to get down to like 1,200 calories or less. And that sounds terrible. Like the thought of only eating that many calories is like so restrictive and unsustainable that no one's going to be able to sustain that kind of weight loss. And that's what all these diets are about. They just want you to cut your calories super hard so you see quick weight loss. You get super emotional and excited because you lost like 5 pounds in a few days, which is probably just water weight. And then like you're like, oh, I lost this weight. And then all of a sudden, like you have some carbs and it's like, oh, I'm gaining all this weight back, putting more water on, putting more water weight on. So what people need to do is, okay, I'm only eating 1,500 calories. I need to get up to at least 2,000 calories, for example. Like, again, we don't know who we're talking to here. But from there, if I'm at a maintenance at 2,000 calories, then I can cut down to 1,800 calories, and then you can still lose weight. But that's going to be a lot more enjoyable than only eating 1,100 or 1,200 calories, and it's going to be a lot more sustainable. And I really urge people and all my clients to get to that maintenance calorie as high as you can. I literally have some clients that are eating at maintenance at like 2,700 calories. And like, that's a good spot for them. So now when we're trying to cut and lose weight, they're eating 2,400 calories completely full throughout the day, and they're still losing weight. And that's actually sustainable that way because you're not going to feel like restricted. You're still going to have all the energy you need for your workouts, to be able to build muscle. And that's really the only way to go about it, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's a really good answer. The second to last question was, what are your thoughts on mock meat? Is it actually healthy? So for anyone watching on YouTube, I'll just link here. There's a video I already did discussing, this was more in Australia, like different brands of mock meats that we've got in the supermarket. And I showed some of them that are really processed but taste really good, but I still have them as a treat. And some of them are actually really clean and like no bad ingredients, and it's actually really good for you. So it depends on the brand. But what are your thoughts on it? Because I saw your Instagram post and it was like exactly the same approach as me.
Yeah, it's a tough topic too, especially when I talk to like meat eaters about this, because they're like, oh, well, you want me to give up meat, but you're eating all these like processed meats and they aren't good for you and stuff. And I'm like, all right, hold on for a second. What makes you think that the meat you're eating is good for you? One. Second of all, you think your meat is natural, but your meat is also very processed. I promise you, decaying flesh isn't red and pretty wrapped up like in a nice thing at the supermarket for you. Like they add a ton of chemicals to it to maintain that freshness. Like, so I don't really want to hear any arguments about the whole process thing. Again, mock meats, they're not meant to be a help food. Like, they're meant to help people transition, to help people who have cravings for a certain food. Just because we're vegan or eat plant-based doesn't mean we still didn't like those foods growing up, right? I think we look at it as a bigger purpose than just our taste buds. So it's a nice way of not harming animals, still getting a good flavor and taste, having more options. I think it's great when they include mock meats at restaurants to give people more options to eat, and to see that it still tastes really good. And like you said, there are very unhealthy mock meats, and there's ones that are a lot healthier for you. We're at the point where like you can actually make your own mock meats if you wanted to, like seitan. You can make your own seitan at home and make it very healthy for you. Aside if like, unless you're like allergic to gluten and have celiac and something like that, then I obviously wouldn't recommend that. But some you can make from soy and like different other products, and they really can be pretty healthy. And even like the unhealthiest mock meat, in my opinion, is still going to be healthier than the meat you're consuming, because you're not getting that inflammatory protein from the meat. You're not getting the heme iron. You're not getting the cholesterol. You're not getting the saturated fat.
Yeah.
So it's like, you got to, think a little more in depth into it, not just say, oh, this is processed, so it can't be good for me, I'm just going to keep eating meat.
Yeah.
So,
I think there's a lot. I don't know the exact processes of the meat and like exactly what goes on behind the scenes to keep it like that on the shelf. I know with salmon, like they still dye it pink because it's actually gray. But I know that like even in the feed and stuff, they can be fed like growth hormones. I know the chicken is sometimes like injected with salt water, so it's like extremely high in sodium. But even having like tofu sausages with herb flavorings and it might have some preservatives, it's still like, it doesn't have all the saturated fat and cholesterol and stuff. So as long as it's paired with heaps of health food, so I'll switch up. Sometimes I'll buy a couple of mock chicken things, or like a veggie mince for the week, and then I'll also buy tofu and something else that's natural. So I have like a mix of store-bought stuff and a mix of natural stuff, so it still helps satisfy cravings and stuff. But I just like the variety because I don't want to just eat like tofu or beans on repeat forever. I like to have different meals. And
exactly.
I wrote a post for my Instagram. I hardly ever crave actual meat, but like maybe every few months, if I'm feeling really run down or haven't been eating enough veggies and stuff, sometimes I'll start to crave something like that. So there's this veggie mince that I buy that's pretty natural and is fortified with iron and B12. So I cook that up with a can of beans and crushed tomatoes, and I turn it into lasagna, nachos, or cottage pie. And then like a few days of eating that for meal prep, I'm good for months and like have no more cravings. So usually I tell people to eat exactly what you're craving, but in my case, like I don't want to eat the actual cow. So it's more like the nutrients that I'm craving. So it's kind of a sign, eat that, and it's fortified with the iron and B12. Make sure I'm taking my vitamins and stuff every day, and make sure I'm eating more veggies because I might have like just not been taking care of myself if I've been really busy or something. So it can definitely provide like a good source of nutrients. But yeah, I think they're really good, especially for people making the transition. And yeah, I think they can be part of your diet as long as you're eating like healthy foods kind of thing.
Yeah, just like with everything, it's all about balance. Like I'm not eating mock meats for my main protein source. It's not part of my main meals. I usually focus on tofu, tempeh, and other different whole foods, but I'll still have a mock meat, 2 to 3 times a week. And there's nothing wrong with that, especially with the amount of whole food veggies and whole grains and fruits that I'm consuming. It's all going to counteract any of the bad, maybe processed chemicals that could be in there. And people should look at like actual, like, or animal meat the same way too, where it's like, okay, if I can't mentally give this up yet, just reduce it. And there's nothing wrong with taking it slow and just reducing your consumption. That's what like those meatless Mondays and stuff like that were made for. It's to help you just to like realize that like, okay, I can do this another way. I don't have to be completely dependent on this just because this is what I've been taught my whole life.
Mm. Yeah, I totally agree. And the last question was just something you mentioned earlier. Do you want to just touch on inflammatory protein versus anti-inflammatory protein?
Yeah, so without getting too like sciencey here, so animal protein is inflammatory to the body. When you consume it, there's this compound that gets released. I can't think of the name of it off the top of my head. Maybe you know it, or TMAO. TMAO. I'm not going to even try to pronounce the whole word of what it means, but basically it's this chemical that gets produced in our gut when we consume animal protein, and it triggers a very high inflammatory response in our bodies. So the thing is, people say like animal protein is the best source of protein. It's the highest. It's a lot higher than plant sources, but you have to also think about how much of it are you actually absorbing, because when your body's in an inflamed state, you're not going to be able to absorb all the protein that you're actually eating. On the contrary, when you're eating plant protein, it's actually anti-inflammatory because it has phytochemicals in it. So it comes with a lot of things that protect, reduce inflammation and actually protect your heart and your brain and stuff like that. So it's like, it's even if they say it's less absorbed in the plant protein, you're still getting a lot of it because your body's in a good alkaline state where it's not inflamed. And that way you're actually absorbing a lot that you're eating. So that has to be something that's taken into consideration. It's really not all about the numbers. You have to actually think about what's happening in your body as a result of the food you're eating.
Yeah, like there's a lot more that happens beneath the surface. People just think that meat is the go-to and that's the end of the story kind of thing. So there's a lot more that goes on in the body.
Definitely. It's a complicated process, but it all like goes back into like our gut and our health inside. It's really going to be tough for you to build a sustainable, long-term good body if you don't have the health first. Like you'll see bodybuilders that eat a ton of animal products and they might look jacked and they might look good, but it's short-lived because later on it turns into problems and it's just not sustainable long-term. And you see it all the time. Either bodybuilders having issues later on or passing away earlier and stuff like that. So it's just something you have to be aware of. It's the way you look is important, but your health is even more important. It dictates how you look as well.
I've seen a few things of like bodybuilders having like heart issues like at very early ages and having just like other problems and stuff pop up. So it's a really good reminder that you really have to do like treat it from your internal health first, and then that's going to affect your external appearance. But just because someone looks good, it doesn't like reflect their internal organs. That's what I always mention as well.
Exactly. And it's like people always look for a cop out. They're going to be like, oh, well, they took steroids. That's why they're not healthy and, they're dying early. Yeah. It's like, okay, well, you could always blame it on something else, but like, just look at the data. It's very clear what's good and bad for you, like I said before.
Yeah. Cool. That's all of our questions done. So I'll put the links to your Instagram in the description. Is there anything else that you wanted me to link or where else people can find you? Or is Instagram?
No, Instagram's my main platform. I'm on Facebook too, under the same name, but I really don't use it that much. Most of it is all on Instagram. So that's the best way to reach me, to be honest.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to come on, and hopefully it will be a really educational podcast for people. So yeah, thank you heaps.
Definitely. Thank you for having me on. It was a great discussion and I love talking about all this. So I'm glad to be a part of it.
Yeah, all good. Cool. Thank you. Well, I'll catch up with you later.
Sounds good. Have a good one.
Yeah. Bye.